This is Judith Lay welcoming you to Manx Radio and to the podcast of this week's edition of At Your Service. Manx Radio! This weekend marks the end of a journey for the Methodist Church in Port Erin, an 8-year journey made up of prayer, planning, advice, discussion, financial considerations and sheer hard work. And the destination is a beautiful new chapel, a modernised, spacious hall and smaller multi-purpose rooms for use by the local community, all alongside the original Methodist Church that's been a beacon to the Christian faith, standing on Station Road in Port Erin for the last 121 years. Yesterday, the ribbons on the new entrance doors were cut, the building was officially declared open, and in less than an hour's time, the first Sunday service in the new chapel will be led by Reverend David Shirtliff, who was the minister in charge of Port Erin when the project began all those years ago. On the programme today, we'll be finding out more about that journey from the old to the new in conversation with some of the Port Erin church family, mixed with some of the hymns which will be used in the service this morning.
Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live. A place where saints and children tell how hearts learn to forgive. Built of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and vault of grace. Here the love of Christ shall end divisions. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where prophets speak and words are strong and true. Symbol of God's grace. Here is one declaim the faith of Jesus. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where love is found in water, wine, and wheat. A banquet hall on holy ground where peace and justice meet. Here the love of God through Jesus is revealed in time and space. As we share in Christ the feast that frees us, all are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place.
Let us build a house where love can dwell. Well, the house has been built, and now we join the present minister in Port Erin Methodist Church, Reverend Dr. Sean Turner, as he welcomes everyone to yesterday morning's official opening ceremony. There are 2 sets of doors, one leading into the chapel itself and the other leading into the main hall, so 2 openers were needed to cut the ribbons on each of them. The doors to the hall were officially opened by Mrs. Jean Karran, who pays tribute to Robert, who's been in charge of the most recent building project, and also to Keith McArd, who built the original hall and meeting rooms in 1973, which have now been incorporated into the new design. And later in the programme, we'll find out why Mrs. Muriel Nixon was the ideal choice to cut the second ribbon on the doors leading into the new chapel.
It is great to see you all here this morning. So Lee is going to come, and he's going to deliver some scissors to a couple of very special people who are going to cut ribbons, and we will be declared officially open after how many years? About 8 years? Yeah. So I know I've been here for 4 years, and it was well established in talking and planning, and I have a filing cabinet full of studies and things. It's hard to believe that the journey has finally brought us to this point. So, yay! Now, we have ribbons on both doors.
Keith has come. Now, most of you will know Keith. It was his business, McArd, that built the original in 1973. And then we've got Robert, who has been the person who has supervised this new building. So, thanks to both of them, they're pleased to open this and you can all relax.
I'm delighted to cut the ribbon and welcome you all into the new chapel.
Mrs. Jean Karran officially opened the doors to the newly refurbished main hall, and as we talked, mentioned an important feature that looks new but isn't. It's the cross made by Terry Kelly that used to be fixed to the outside front wall of the hall and has now been refurbished and stands at the chapel entrance.
I've been here all my life, so that's why I was one of the ones that was asked to do it, because I've been from a baby brought till now, so that's why.
Now, there's no doubt about it, any kind of change where a church is involved is difficult, isn't it? We don't like to part with a place that's full of our memories. It's a difficult decision to make, isn't it?
Yeah. I felt hard of it, but it's home now.
And it'll be nice if the old chapel can be changed inside to perhaps a house or whatever, so that the outside of it will look the same.
I think that's what it is. It's going to stay there.
And that will be good, because churches become a landmark.
Yes, when you come in the village, that's the first thing you see, yeah.
And lovely that the cross is outside.
Yeah,
and
that's lovely, doesn't it?
It looks beautiful. It looks brand new, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm sure we all will remember Terry Kelly who made it, don't we?
Yes. Oh, he'd be delighted if he could see it now. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Well, I wish you many more happy years in the chapel here, Jean.
Thank you.
Jean mentioned Keith McArd, whose company built the original hall extension to the 1903 chapel. And in conversation with Keith himself, I discovered a long family association with that original church.
My grandfather and my father built the chapel. It was 1903. It was for my grandfather, really. I've got photographs of it being built where the spire wasn't built at that time, and then another photo where it's half built, and the scaffold was just poles. It's scary when you look at it. They were up about 60 feet, and all they had was these poles with some planks on them. I mean, you look at the stonework, and to taper up a spire must have been very difficult. Just to mention it, the Wesleyan Chapel was in Victoria Square in Port Erin, which my granddad and my dad built. But in those days, it was Wesleyan and Primitive, and then they joined up as Methodist. And this was the main church then, because it was larger than the one in Victoria Square. Victoria Square now is the Erin Arts, which is marvellous for the community.
And the Sunday school building that you were involved in, would that be, the 1970s?
Yes, about 1973, I think it was, yeah.
Were you involved in the actual design of it?
No, I think it was Mr. Stuart Nixon. He was a surveyor.
Now, thinking back to it, what you were building in the 1970s was quite a modern building then, wasn't it?
It was. It was ahead of its time, really, especially the big windows,
You must feel a strong family link here.
Oh, I do, yes. I don't go enough, that's the only thing. Nowadays, I'm handicapped a bit with my feet, and the knee.
It's lovely that you could be here today. Thank you very much indeed for chatting with me.
Thank you.
That was Keith McArd, whose company built the 1973 hall and meeting rooms, an extension to the original church built by Keith's grandfather and father in 1903. Keith mentioned that the design of the 1973 development was in the hands of Stuart Nixon, and it's Stuart's sister-in-law, Mrs. Muriel Nixon, who officially opened the doors into the new chapel. Here she looks back to that 1973 development and forward to the future.
We were all so proud of this lovely new hall, and, it served us very well. I was sad to leave the old church because, you've got so many happy memories of it. You know, I was married there, my children were christened there, and of course you buried your loved ones as well from it. So it had lots of memories. But when I look at the building now and our lovely new chapel, I think, well, we're going to be warm in the winter, and I'm sure it's going to serve us very well.
Well, that's a wonderfully brave thing to say, Muriel. It really is.
Well, yes, you've got to be brave, haven't you? And as someone once said to me, if you don't go forward, you go back. So
how do you think Stuart will be feeling about this today? Looking down on it all now, how do you think he's feeling?
I think he'd be very proud. I think he would. We miss him a lot.
I'm sure you do. But even though the buildings look different now, all those memories are still here.
Yes, you still have your memories.
Muriel, it's lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your part this morning and for chatting with me now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The Methodist Church in Port Erin has always been committed to serving the needs of the wider local community, and this project has grown out of the desire to do more of that, as well as recognising that the ageing 1903 church was larger than the present church family needs and was also very costly to maintain. As you might imagine, a core group of church members have worked tirelessly on this project for the whole 8 years. Mrs. Judy Matthews is just one of that group who began exploring options when Reverend David Shirtliff, Reverend Sean's predecessor, had care of the church. How difficult was it, Judy, in the very early days?
Very, very difficult. As you said before, a lot of praying, a lot of heartache, a lot of feasibility studies. We looked for probably a year as to see whether we could actually redevelop the church itself. But it just got to the stage when A, it was too big, B, it was too expensive to run, and C, there were problems with damp that we just couldn't afford. So we had to do something. And as Sean said, under David's guidance, we looked at different projects for this hall and how we could make it best fit, A, for us, but B, for the community. And that's where we started from.
And you were very careful to take your time over it. I know it's been a very, very gradual process. But at the same time, I think people could see that it's not responsible stewardship to continue to put money into a building that is not suitable for purpose and has passed its best.
It's not just the finances, it's the human resources as well. I mean, we should be here to be doing God's work, not trying to keep the building from falling down or the damp or keeping it warm on a Sunday and the stewards running around trying to maintain that property. We should be doing other things, and that was, I think, probably the guiding thing really that led it forward.
You are passionate about serving the community. Community outreach is very important to you personally, Judy, isn't it?
It is, and in fact the food bank actually in the south actually started in these premises. We were here for about 5 years before, partly because the premises here weren't big enough, but partly because we were embarking on this programme. So Food Bank moved out. But yes, there's a lot of people from this church that are involved with Food Bank. And probably one of the church's biggest contributions, in my mind, is the butties and banter that we do on a Wednesday, which just gives our food bank folk a chance to come and talk, share how they're feeling, just feel that somebody was listening to them. And I think that, for me, is the role of the church.
But alongside this, you have done some really special things. You had a very beautiful organ in the old church, and you went to considerable trouble to find a new home, and that was relocated to a Catholic church in Poland. Sean, that must have given you quite a bit of joy to think of that working out in that way.
It is absolutely wonderful that the organ found a new home and is able to be used. But it is also true that I, among many, dreadfully missed that organ. I speak as an organ person, and it just sounded wonderful. And, in the sanctuary, the acoustics were really good. But I think the thing that I'm happiest about as Mr. I Love Christmas is that the last thing that was played on it here was, O Come All Ye Faithful. And the word we got back was that once they got it installed in Poland, the first thing they played on it was O Come All Ye Faithful. So, perfect.
I'd just like to say that the guys who came from Poland, a guy called Waldek with his wife, were absolutely fantastic. They came as strangers and we shook hands. 4 days later they went and we hugged. And my husband and I have an invitation to go out to Poland to see the organ. Like Sean said, we didn't want to lose the organ. But these guys came over and it was a beautiful sunny day and I came down to make them a brew. And they'd stripped out all the organ and the swell box, and behind it is a big rose window, which we knew was there, but none of us had ever seen it. And the sunshine was streaming through that window. I sat on the front pew and I nearly cried, and I just felt that was God's sunshine saying, yes, get on with it, you're doing the right thing. And that is my lasting memory, is of Waldek playing the organ and the sun streaming through the next day.
But you also gave the people in Poland some money. They found this particularly touching, didn't they?
This was actually Waldek and his wife who took in a Ukrainian family, and they were struggling for finances, obviously. So the Christmas we did a concert here with the Meadowside Choir, and with everybody's permission, we gave the money from that to Waldek and to Anya to help them to look after this family, mother and daughter.
The other thing is that the built environment may not change dramatically because the person who has bought the former church intends to convert it into a house, doesn't he?
Yes, as far as we're aware, that's what's... at the moment, he's just got planning permission for change to residential use. But his plans, I gather, are to develop it into a 4-bedroomed house.
But alongside it is your beautiful new church and community facility with the big hall in the middle, which has been beautifully refurbished, and so it's a big clear area for anybody to do anything, whether it's put on a pantomime or have their 21st birthday party. Then you've got some smaller rooms and your beautiful new church area. You have brought in, obviously, your furnishings, from the church, but it fits in beautifully in what is a very modern room.
I think it was important because quite naturally there were some members of the congregation who were very reluctant to move from the old chapel. So I think it's been very important all the way along to involve everybody with the discussions about what we do and how we do it, but to bring as much of the old church as we could. If we could have brought the organ, we would have done, but we couldn't, so we've brought other things. They took the old hymn numbers board off the wall, and one of our church members, Eric Wilson, has lovingly restored it and cleaned up the lettering on it, and it looks beautiful now. It looks far cleaner than it ever did in the old church.
There is a very special cross that has been relocated. On the front of the wall, there used to be a cross upon the wall. There's a substantial carved cross in a light wood, and that's now been relocated and stands independently just at the entrance to the new church. But it actually looks as though it's brand new, although it isn't.
It was carved by a gentleman called Terry Kelly, who used to go to Colby Chapel, and he asked for it to be put on the front of Port Erin because he felt that more people would see it passing there than anywhere else. I don't know how many years ago it is. It's a good while. And it used to be taken down every Good Friday and processed from the Catholic Church round to ShopRite, where we had a service on Good Friday morning. Sadly, we've got to the state now when the cross is heavier than it used to be, or it seems it when you're getting older. So it's now firmly positioned. It won't move now. But I think it makes a statement that says this might not look very much like a church from the outside compared to the old church, but it says this is where we are.
The church is the people. I mean, that is the phrase that is used all the time, but it is the phrase that is true. You know, buildings are important. They matter greatly. But when we were looking at different plans and this, that, and the other, one thing that was always central was that this wasn't going to be a place just for us, that it was going to be something for the community, for community use, obviously for the things we do with Food Bank, anything else we could come up with. So I'm hoping that once we get settled in and get used to the space, that the space itself might inspire some ideas. We'll let the Spirit move and we'll run with it. We do live in a society now where church is foreign to a lot of people. I've had a couple of experiences since I've been here. I was at a social function where a lady came up to me and said, "Where do you pay?" And I said, "No, this is free. This is a social event." And she said, "I didn't know you could come into church without paying." And I said, "Of course you can." So, I mean, and if, what you give, you give. It's giving. It's not a standing order. So you give from the heart. And I had a baptism about a year and a half ago. And of course, there were a lot of people in the church that aren't normally there. And there was a lady who was just standing in the entranceway, and she finally sidled up to me and just said, "Where do I sit? What do I do?" And I get it, because I am a shy introvert. So when I go to a new place, I feel completely out of place. And so I just said, you sit wherever you want. The service will be on the screen. It's very non-threatening once you've been there, but until you've been there, it can be intimidating. But I think the thing about Methodists in particular is that we are very social animals, and if we don't know what to do with something, we throw food at it. So I think that helps us with the community. And I personally have found that, once you have a conversation with somebody, the alienness goes away quite quickly. It's not on a piece of paper anymore. It's an inviting place. And that Celtic cross that you mentioned before, wow.
Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou
it's not got the beauty of the 1903 chapel next door. But I think the architecture is good in that you come in through the light doors, which are all glass so you can see into a common area from which you either turn left into the hall or you go straight ahead into the chapel. And that was done very deliberately because there's bifold doors so that anybody coming in sees the sanctuary area of the chapel. It's not behind a solid door. The doors into the chapel will always be open so anybody can go in. You know, if they come to puppy training or line dancing, they can still go into the chapel.
Whatever needs a home, you want to be that home, don't you?
Absolutely. And we are in discussions with the people who run the dementia cafes, and we're hoping that in the autumn we'll be able to start one here as well, because there's a big need for that.
You've got state-of-the-art technology here because it's just such a sensible thing to do whilst you're rebuilding the chapel.
Audiovisual is just part and parcel with who we are now because we're in that modern age. I believe completely in lifelong learning, and where I'm going with that is learning is two-way. So if somebody comes and says, can we try this? It might be something we hadn't thought of, and we can take that idea and run with it ourselves, or ideally, we would work together and do something fun.
This is just the start, isn't it, Judy, of an exciting future for this Methodist church in this community.
That was what kept us going, wasn't it, really? As Sean said before, we had a lot of times of, are we doing the right thing? But throughout it all, we felt that we're in a position physically in the village, but also in the spiritual life of the village to be there to offer fellowship. And who knows how long it takes for somebody to come to see them. It's more than just the fellowship. And hopefully that's what will happen here.
Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness, morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
And that's where we must leave the new Port Erin Methodist Church, which was officially opened yesterday. Thank you to Reverend Dr. Sean Turner and Mrs. Judy Matthews and everyone who made me so welcome and chatted to me. I wish you all a richly blessed time of praise and thanksgiving this morning, the first Sunday service in the new chapel. And we'll finish off with a look at our notice board, starting with an open house with afternoon coffee. It's at the Rollag na Tui on the Slog. Call in this afternoon any time between 2 and 5 p.m. for tea, coffee, cakes and a raffle. And all the proceeds will benefit Ballakilferrick Chapel. Moving on to the week ahead, and on Tuesday the 13th, there's a coffee morning in Port St Mary Methodist Church from 10 until 11:30. This Wednesday, the weekly concert in St Thomas's Church here in Douglas will be given by Shenanigans Band Folk Group. Starting at the usual time of 7:45, it's free admission with refreshments afterwards and a retiring collection. And St Thomas's Church is just off Douglas Promenade, close to the Gaiety Theatre and the Villa Marina complex. This Thursday, simple lunches will again be served in the Cool Chapel Hall. Pop in between noon and 2 o'clock for the usual delicious homemade soups and desserts, followed by tea or coffee, all for just £7. There's a warm welcome, and the Cool Chapel Hall at the start of Cool Road is just across the small roundabout at the top end of the Isle of Man Business Park. And on Thursday evening, John and Karran Elliott and friends will be in concert in the Erin Arts Centre in Port Erin, starting at 7:30. Admission is free with a retiring collection, and there'll be refreshments served after the concert. And I'm afraid that's all that we have time for now, but I'll be back later in our virtual lounge tonight from 9 o'clock onwards with Sundown. Easy listening music to round off your day. And I'd love you to join me if you can. So, till whenever we meet again, this is Judith saying thank you for listening, and I wish you and those you love a blessed and peaceful week and a very good morning.
The Nation Station.